Hello everyone and welcome to Hutch's Garage for episode 50 of my 1954 International Harvester Farmall Super MTA tractor restoration. This is part 2 of a two-part series about working on the Belt Pulley Drive. The drive will be reassembled in this episode. Please note that this video footage was taken at an earlier date.
Looking back at the Belt Pulley output shaft, I took it to my friend's house. We had to press basically. We took one of those bearing separator things that go in here like this and used a screw to force this off. Of course, the cotter pin was not in here, nor the bolt. And this gear is connected to this, or holds this bearing on. In other words, this bearing goes over the part of the gear. I want to show you that. I took this circlip out, which I found out later I did not have to do if you want to keep the bearing. So if you're going to change the bearing, you'll have to take that circlip out. So we put it under here, put pressure here. We had to heat the gear up a little bit. You don't want to go over 450 degrees, or keep it under 500 for sure. And eventually it came free. And then the lower part, we use the same thing under this, pressed on the shaft, and pull the bearing off. Of course, this circlip has to be out when you do that. And I replaced the seal, and I need to talk about that. I'll talk about that in the next clip. But I replaced it. The old one was actually a real leather Chicago rawhide seal, and it definitely needed to be replaced. So the problem here right now, you got to keep this up, and we got to put this circlip in. I'm going to try to put it in by compressing it with this large adjustable wrench. Let's see if I can do that. Alright, I'm getting it there. Alright, so it's mostly in. So now I'll just take a screwdriver and a hammer and finish it the rest of the way on there. Okay, it's back on. So we're now ready to install this. I want to correct a couple things I said in that last clip. We did have to pull up on this and press on the shaft to pull the bearing retainer and seal holder off this shaft. Okay, the sleeve comes off first after you get the gear and this top bearing off. That just slides off. And then the circlip, you take it out. The reason for that is to get the bearing out to access the seal. Alright, and the seal I used was a Timken 470898. Also a SKF 201098, I believe, also will fit this particular seal. In other words, you can replace it with that SKF number. I'm ready to put the Belt Pulley Drive back together. First thing I'm going to do is put on the O-ring on the output shaft bearing retainer. This is a size 244. That's about all I can tell you about it. And I'm going to coat it with this Dow Corning 111. I had trouble getting this thing out. And if it ever needs to be taken apart again, this should help. Prevent it from being locked up. Basically, it glued itself to the case. And this will also somewhat help when I put it in, give it a little bit of slickness. I don't believe the early M's had an O-ring. The Belt Pulley Drive is different on the Super M's and the Super MTAs. And this O-ring system is one of them. Now I want to point out one thing here on these bolts. This is the 1 1/4 inch bolt, 3/8 inch by 1 1/4 inch long, and this is a 3/8 by 1 1/2 inch long. The shorter bolt goes on the output shaft. Okay, so that's the bolts I'll be using. Let's see, get everything in order here. Now I'm going to place the shims back to where they were, and if you'll notice right there it says top. So I've got this upside down, so this right here will go down here. So keep track of that, because I'm not sure if these shims are go on one way, but I got them all lined up so they match the holes. I think I'll stick a bolt in here to help guide. And before I stick it in, I might as well put a little lubricant on the bearings. I'm using my Ultra Slick Assembly lube. I'll just put a coating around there and let it soak in a little bit. Also on this upper one. I get it in here. Makes it sound a little bit better. Alright, so I've got my top going like this. I don't think it matters which shaft you put in first. This is the way I'm doing it. I'm going to put this in first. Wheel it on, make sure my top is down. Let's get a bolt sticking through, get through all the shims. Let me bring one back around here. Let's do this here. Sorry, I'm in front of the camera. Let's see if I can start one of these longer ones. Let me get a... And the problem is my bearing going in back here is misaligned, and this is going up and down on me like this. I'm getting a little bit farther by wiggling it. This piece here, yeah, it's down. I gotta lift it up. Wiggle it, wiggle it, wiggle it. Let's use these longer bolts to get things to draw it up. Make sure you get through the shins. Alright, just kind of gently start those evenly. We're not up to the O-ring yet. The retainer's just now going into the case. The proper bolts in. Alright, so there's that. Doesn't just roll, but of course that seal's a brand new seal, and it's a little friction there. Alright, so that concludes that part of putting it in. The next thing we'll do, we'll put the gear on, line it up, and put the input shaft in. We're at the point where we can put the input shaft in. It goes through this way, and then there's the drive gear that goes right there. What I'm going to do, there's a bronze bushing right here on this outer end, and it was in good shape, but I'm going to grease it up a little bit before we install a shaft. There's a hole and a trough. Of course, I got it upside down. It's right up under here, that lets oil that splaces around in to grease that bronze bushing. Okay, don't want to get so much grease that it plugs it off. And then I'll also put it on the shaft. The first thing I'm going to do now, though, is put the gear, let's set it inside there. And it goes on like this, okay? And then there's this little piece right here that slides in here that moves the gear in and out. I did not take the detent lever off. There was no need. I could still clean it good enough. So I'll wind that up like that, and I've got it in the out position. When this engages, it pulls it forward into one of the drive for the transmission gear. Okay, now I've got it lined up there. Let's grab this. Put a little grease on it also. The shims go on next. Well, actually, yeah, they go on next. No, or I forget, the O-ring goes in. There's an O-ring that goes around this right here, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and lube it up somewhat beforehand with this Dow Corning 111. Just rub it around that way. Go ahead and place it on. And this is a size 240. Alright. I'm also going to slick this area up in here where it slides in. I think that might help No, I've had this for a while, and it cracked right here, so I had to patch. It was leaking out. Now, I used sandpaper to clean these shims. On this side, there's only two, and they go on a certain way. Let's see. You got a square area like that. So in this case, they would go on this like so, right here. All right. I do want a little lubrication on this bearing before we start it up. So, and it may leak through, and I may have trouble with that when I put my gasket in. So what I'm going to do is pour a little bit of slick in here, turn it. That should be enough. Alright. Of course I got my shims out of alignment. Stick this through. Let's see. Gauge the gear. There we go. Line it into the bushing. Now we have to realign these shims that moved. Okay, it goes on like this. There we go. That's where the other one should have gone, but it didn't. I think I got everything lined up. Let's get the shims aligned. Okay, we're close. Just leave it there. Now there's a gasket that goes on this. As you can see, it's a special shape. I made a new gasket. So this goes on like so. So it will go like this. Like so. Notice there's two places here for oil to get in or out. I have to move these shims so I can get the bolt started. Turned it a little bit. Okay, get another bolt started. They're both over here. And last but not least, this one here. Alright, so I did not have to force it on. All I gotta do now is tighten it up. Make sure this gear, okay, shifts back and forth like that. Driving the output. And just tighten this up. You want to make sure the shims are between this piece and the casing. That's what aligns and gets the proper gear mesh, okay? Putting it out here won't do you any good. In fact, it'll make it too close probably. So don't make that mistake. All right, that's done. Everything operates real well. Let me raise this up so. Like I say, this thing is awkward and heavy. And that concludes putting the belt pulley drive back together.
That's all the time we have for in this episode. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Please continue to join me for the next episode as I restore and rebuild this 1954 International Harvester Farmall Super MTA tractor.